What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another Turn on the Jets podcast, the Fire Everyone edition, three-game losing streak. Me and Connor Rogers here, working that late shift on a Tuesday night. I'm actually live at the Whistle Sports headquarters and giving you a quick spin around of our amazing office down on Broadway. Exciting, I know. Connor, how you doing tonight despite this three-game losing streak? You hanging in there?
Yeah, doing good.
Let's jump right into it. You wrote a really good article this morning, basically calling for the Jets to start Michael Vick, and I think you kind of wrote it in response to the dumpster fire of New England that we all saw last night. Really, to see the Patriots look that bad, I mean, we've seen them struggle in September before, but lose like that, and Brady to play like that, and with how inconsistent Buffalo's been, same with Miami, you basically said not to wait any longer, not turn the page, but move over to Vic immediately. Talk a little bit about your motivation for that article and kind of what you're thinking about the Jets quarterback situation.
Yeah, it was definitely a different piece than I usually do. I try to stick to X's and O's and stuff like that, but after last night, I mean, I work with a couple of guys that used to play, and they were been telling me since July that they think Brady is done, and it's hard to actually accept that until you see it. And last night was just the proof that the guy is just not throwing the ball down the field. They aren't a good team, flat out. They have an excellent secondary, and they're just not a very good team right now. And it's kind of alarming. And then when you look at the Jets situation, one of the commenters called me out on it today. He said, well, you've been pushing Geno Smith on us for over a year and saying be patient. And I'm not saying Geno Smith is done with the Jets. I mean, this is a guy that's going to be under contract going into next year and the year after that. And was regarded as a project coming out of West Virginia, running a spread shotgun offense, and has all the talent in the world. But there's no reason that he needs to. This evaluating year concept is just, it's really frustrating right now. There's no reason that they can't get another offseason with Geno and bring him in next year. Maybe, you draft a mid-round guy and you get competition going. But right now, I truly believe that you have to at least see if Michael Vick gives you the best chance to win. Because a lot of people are picking the Bills as the best team in the division right now, and they're quarterbacked by Kyle Lauren. So if you really are going to sit here and tell me that Michael Vick doesn't give the Jets the best chance to win this division, I mean, yeah, if you want to look at Geno going forward, that's great, but you're talking about a guy that just doesn't look ready. He has all the talent in the world, and maybe he steps it up, but, I mean, it's just getting to the point where you have to try something different to energize this team before they're 1-6 and the season's over.
Welcoming in Dalbin Osorio, perfect timing. Dalbin, you wrote an interesting read on Monday, and it was great to have both of your guys' kind of perspective on the quarterback situation back to back. Right. And your article was basically just an evaluation. Geno's played comparatively to a handful of other quarterbacks through his first 20 games. When you look at Geno, and as somebody who thinks that Geno should start this week and maybe start for a few games after, right, what is your line of thinking in staying with Geno for the San Diego game and potentially for the Denver and New England game after that?
Well, first off, I mean, Connor's piece was excellent, and I think he made a lot of really, really good points that I think a lot of people who've been calling for Vic made. And so, I mean, I definitely respected reading his piece. My argument for Geno is, and it's more like I remember the quarterback that Michael Vick is, and he's a turnover-prone quarterback who does leave himself susceptible to injury. He's a little loose with the ball. This team that he's going to be quarterbacking, if let's say you insert Michael Vick now, isn't that Eagles team that he quarterbacked in 2011. Like, we don't have LaShawn McCoy, we don't have Deshaun Jackson, we don't have at the skill positions, we don't have those same players. And I do think that there's a lot to be said for energizing the offense. You saw what Mike Glennon did with Tampa Bay. You saw what Teddy Bridgewater did with Minnesota. But I just think that there's been enough good. And granted, I know the interceptions look bad. I absolutely get that. He's on pace for 28 turnovers, and that's unacceptable. But I do think that there's been enough flashes over the last 20 games, and especially even over the last about 7 or 8, like how he ended last season and now has started this season. He played pretty well the first half of Green Bay. Second half, the game got away from him a little bit. Moved the ball against Chicago, but he had the really bad pick six and then the bad throw in the red zone. Detroit was the one really, really bad game that I think he came out from jump and just did not play well at all. But I think that too often the Jets have made the mistake of having a quick hook with guys or like moving on from guys. And I agree with Khan. Geno does have all the talent in the world, and you have a chance to actually do something with him because the AFC East is so vulnerable. Do I think that Mike Vick can lead this team to an AFC East title? I don't. But that's just because you're talking about a guy who's had one good year as a quarterback over the last X amount of years that he started, whereas with Geno, you don't know, and he has a chance to get better. I don't think Mike Vick is going to get any better than he is right now, but I definitely understand Connor's point about seeing what you have with him.
Yeah, I mean, my thoughts on the situation, I think that there's good points to kind of be made on both sides. I think where we're at right now is that the Jets are going to start Geno this Sunday against San Diego. He's basically coming off 2 relatively poor games. I think he was good enough for them to win against Oakland and Green Bay. I think he did move the ball very well against Chicago, but the 2 turnovers could kind of be pointed out as the primary reason that they lost. And then last week against Detroit was the first time this year he really looked like kind of the skittish quarterback we saw as a rookie when things got ugly for him last season. And what's concerning about that is that there's been a regression over the course of the 4 games. So, he started out playing, really well against Oakland, step back against Green Bay, step back against Chicago, and then another step back against Detroit. So, is he going to kind of rise out of that like he did in December of last year, or is he going to continue to kind of trend downward? And the Jets can't afford him to trend downward these next 2 weeks. I don't want to keep lumping in New England with Denver and San Diego because they're just not the caliber of teams as those 2 anymore. But dealing in the reality that Geno's going to start this week, I think that he's going to be on a pretty quick hook on Sunday. And I think the thought in bringing him in was that the problem with having Matt Sims as the backup last year is that basically the Jets had to wait 4 full bad Geno games before pulling the trigger because Sims wasn't the guy of the future. He wasn't the guy of the present. He just was a guy who just happened to be their backup because they were thin at the position. You brought Vic in so that you can much more quickly stop the bleeding with Geno. Once he gets to 2 bad games, you don't have to let it get to 4 bad games. So if he comes out in the first quarter against San Diego, throws an early interception, and the Jets are down 10-0, I think you're going to see Rex make the move and saying, we're 1-3, we need to find a way to potentially win this game. Maybe Vic comes in and doesn't do all that much and they lose. They go back to Geno next week against Denver. Maybe he comes in and provides a spark. They win, and then he goes with Vic again, and eventually it bounces back to Geno. I'm not sure, but I do think that unless Geno Smith can avoid a couple killer early turnovers and the Jets can avoid falling behind by 10 or 14 points in the first half, like they have the past 2 weeks, I would not be stunned if the Jets kind of turn to Vic in the first half. Now, the hope is that Geno comes out, plays well, the Jets come out, play well in a game that they have most people are going to expect them to lose in, and they find a way to win and kind of go from there because the way their early schedule kind of breaks, it's interesting because they're in last place right now in the AFC East, but they're in last place by 1 game, and they don't have a single AFC loss. You look at New England, they got 2 AFC losses. They went through the first quarter of their schedule, which was supposed to be an easy part of their schedule for them. New England still has to play Green Bay, Chicago, Detroit, Cincinnati this Sunday, has to play Denver. They have a tough part of their schedule coming up. And then if you look at Miami has 2 AFC losses already. Buffalo has 2 AFC losses already. So the Jets are going to kind of make or break this season in their divisional games. If the Jets go out and go 5-1 in their division this year, they might be able to get in the playoffs at 8-8 because that's how bad the AFC East might be. So it's important to win these AFC games, but it's going to be very interesting to see how Geno plays on Sunday because honestly, it's anybody's guess. I can't say with any confidence that he'll go out and play well. It would not surprise me if he played well. It would also not surprise me if he played poorly and got pulled. Looking at the San Diego matchup, and Connor, I'll throw this back to you. San Diego, I think, in my mind, is probably one of the 5 to 7 best teams in the league. They beat Seattle at home. Philip Rivers has been playing great. All the lights just went off in my office, so I'm going to throw it to you while you tell us why you think the Jets could have a chance to beat San Diego this Sunday. Go ahead.
In terms of could have a chance, it's just simple. You got to develop the run game and just keep the passing options pretty simple right now. Get Amaro involved. He's got to get involved and get creative with screens again to Curley, Chris Johnson. It's going to take a big defensive effort because I think the Chargers have a really underrated defense, and I don't really see the Jets scoring more than 20 points on them. And the problem is, Philip Rivers is playing the best football of his career, and this is a guy that's had some really good seasons. And right now, I mean, he's thrown 9 touchdowns to 1 interception. He pretty much looks unstoppable at this point. This is a guy that went in and threw at least 3 touchdowns on the Seahawks secondary. I mean, he's beating the best right now, and he is the best quarterback in the league after 4 weeks. So if the Jets want to win this game, they're going to have to get creative. I don't know if that's going to, be a pressure scheme Rex can run, if they're going to flood the field with defensive backs like they used to do against Tom Brady 2 and 3 years ago, and got creative to beat him when he was playing at a high level. But it's going to be a really tough game to win, and they're going to have to confuse the best quarterback in the league right now to do it.
Dalvin, the red card. Why? Give me again. Connor's outlined it really well, and I don't disagree with anything he said, especially with how well Rivers is playing.
Yeah.
Why is there a reason to think that the Jets could go into San Diego as probably 9-point underdogs and win this game?
Well, Philip Rivers right now after 4 games is probably playing the best out of any of the quarterbacks. I mean, him and Russell Wilson, I think, are probably neck and neck in terms of how they've been playing. Philip Rivers always seems to struggle against Rex Ryan defenses. And so I think that's where the Jets' lone advantage lies is can Rex come up with a defensive scheme well enough to limit Rivers' opportunities. And I think that's part of it, but I also think it's the Jets have a clear advantage in the running game. Run the ball and keep Rivers on the sideline. Like you're gonna win this game if you take 10, 11 minutes off the play clock and you limit the possessions that Philip Rivers gets. Because if Keenan Allen and Philip Rivers get enough opportunities, and Antonio Gates and Ladarius Green, they get enough opportunities, they're gonna score. I do agree with Connor. I think it's in order for the Jets to win, they need to win. It's 2014, 17-14. It's got to be one of those games. If it gets into a shootout, San Diego's going to win that running away. I don't think the Jets are built to win that game. But it's the running game. It's gonna come down to more Chris Ivory, less Chris Johnson, because I get a lot of people who are like, oh, well, Chris Johnson's played really well, and I get the touchdown last week, but on Sunday, but that wasn't a testament to Chris Johnson's running. That was because Chris Ivory had beat up the Lions already enough that he was able to kind of squirt some tackles and get away. Chris Ivory's the clear-cut best running back on the team. He's playing like a top 6 or 7 running back right now. He's the guy that you need to ride going in, similar to how you rode Sean Green when you beat them in the playoffs. Like, he's a guy that the Chargers defense does struggle with because he's a bigger back. Marshawn Lynch had a pretty good game against the Chargers defense, so I think you utilize Chris Ivory the same way.
Yeah, I mean, this kind of feels like a kitchen sink game to me. I mean, The Jets were 1-3. They're going to come back home to play Denver, a game that is just a horrific matchup for them outside of Denver being probably the second best team in the league. It's just the way they match up with Denver is kind of a nightmare. So this game kind of feels like that. I mean, if you have a trick play that you've been saving, this is the game to break it out on offense. If you have a surprise onside kick or a fake field goal or a fake punt, this might be the game that you kind of break it out. If you have some exotic defensive scheme that, we've seen Rex dial up in the past, and I've been a little bit critical of some of Rex's defensive scheming over the past couple weeks, and what I've said is that Rex is, you can look like the best defensive coach of the past 20 years one week and then have you scratching your head the next week, and he's dialed up some amazing game plans over the past 5 years that have allowed the Jets to have a couple big upset victories and put on some amazing stretches of defensive football. He needs to have one of those days in the office where he is the premier defensive mind in the NFL, and he comes up with a scheme that is going to confuse Phillip Rivers, lead to a couple of turnovers, which the Jets desperately, desperately, desperately need for the Jets to have a chance. So they're going to have to get creative as a coaching staff, and they're going to need players to play to their ability and maybe play above their head in some case. They're going to need Eric Decker to maybe have his first 100 game of the season, even if he's not at 100%. They're going to need Chris Ivory to maybe go for 120 yards and a touchdown or two. They're going to need to find a way to pull stuff up. They're going to have to catch an interception if it lands in their hand. They can't drop a potential pick six. It's that kind of game where the Jets are going to need to be firing on all cylinders and maybe pull out a trick or two. And then if they go and find a way to get a win, maybe this is the kind of win that they could kind of rally around and say, hey, I know we have Denver the following week, but after that, man, things start to get a lot softer on our schedule, and we still got 6 games left in our division. I'm not sure, an AFC East team is clear-cut better than the Jets right now because I think they're all a mess right now, for that matter. So
Yeah.
I think it's probably only going to get worse with Buffalo playing in Detroit and New England having to play Cincinnati next week. So we'll see how it breaks. I guess last thought before we kind of wrap everything up, where do you guys kind of see this season heading? It's so early to tell at 1-3. And Connor, I'll start this with you. And I guess this is both a question for the Jets and the AFC East. Do you realistically think that the Jets could go 8-8 and maybe win a division title this year? Is this a team capable of going 8-8? Kind of, what's their ceiling and what's their floor going forward from here as they enter this kind of brutal 3-game stretch of their schedule?
I mean, I have been pegged at 9-7 before the year started, and I'm still going to stick with that. I think the second half of the schedule is really weak, but I think they have to avoid this from spiraling out of control, because if you start 1-6, it just deflates the entire team, and things get real out of hand, and you start playing differently. You start evaluating younger players, veterans start to get really frustrated, and things get really sloppy fast. But I said 9-7 at the beginning of the year, and said that wouldn't make the playoffs. And in this division, 9-7 could make the playoffs. I don't see the Patriots doing worse than 8-8. I just don't think a Bill Belichick coached team, even though Tom Brady looks like he's lost a step and the offensive line's pretty terrible. I mean, they're going to be an 8-win team, maybe 9. 10 would be really overachieving. But we'll see what they do when Brandon Browner gets back. So it's gonna, if the Jets want to compete, if the Jets want this division, they're going to have to get real creative, and they're going to have to really control the ball on offense, and that starts right from the coaching staff. You got to run the ball with Marty Morningwing has to commit to the run. This one-read offense they're running with Geno Smith right now will not beat anybody. Maybe it'll beat the Oakland Raiders by 5 points at home, but that's about as far as it's going to get. And that Oakland team might not win a game this year under Tony Soprano if you look at the rest of their schedule. So it says a lot where the Jets stand right now. They're giving a good effort. They're not getting blown out by teams. But it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, a loss is a loss, and they're going to have to turn things around. The coaching staff has to find a way to do it.
Dalbin, kind of same question. Where do you see the rest of this season headed, and what do you think it's going to take to win the AFC East this year? What do you think the win total is going to look like?
Right. I mean, before the season, I did peg them at 9-7. I thought that would be enough to make the playoffs as a 5 or a 6 seed, just because the AFC seems a little wacky outside of Denver, and you can kind of see that this was coming. The Patriots got housed last night, and I think that's probably the biggest shocker, is that where the Jets are losing, I mean, each loss has been by 7 points or less. New England got beat by 34 points last night, and that's something that shouldn't be forgotten by a Kansas City team that was much maligned. With the Jets, I think 9-7 might win the division. It's kind of weird to think that. They can't. I think I think New England. It's not only Brady though. It's Brady looks off. The offensive line looks off. They have no running game. The defense is also struggling. Rivas got cooked last night by Dwayne Bowe repeatedly last night. So it's the whole team that looks off. They look old. They don't look hungry. But I agree with Con. It's very hard for me to envision a Bill Belichick team going 500. With that said, I do think the Jets finish 9-7, and I think with the way the rest of the AFC looks, that does look like a division champion, because you have New England, who still has to play, like you said, the NFC North, and they still have to play Denver and Cincinnati. Buffalo ran through. They played Chicago and beat them in overtime, but they still got to play Green Bay and Detroit as well. I think the Jets have a shot. They have to clean it up, because there are no moral victories. You are what your record says you are. They have to clean it up. But 9-7 might get you a division title this year.
Yeah, I think New England definitely has a handful of losses left on their schedule. I agree with you guys. It's hard to ever picture them kind of bottoming out. I think they'll at least hover around 500 all year, maybe right above 500. With the Jets, I think they have to find a way to win 2 of their next 3 games, which is probably beating San Diego and New England. It's very tough to see them beating Denver unless it's like a hurricane here in LA. We'll let it come. But after that, obviously, the schedule softens up to an extent. You get Buffalo at home. You get Pittsburgh at home. You got to go to Kansas City, which looked tough last night, but Kansas City also lost to Tennessee week 1, who's a mess right now, but it's kind of hard to tell in the AFC. And again, the Jets, like we said, have all 6 divisional games left, and I think those are going to kind of be the games that make or break their season, along with handling business when they do play a team like Tennessee and maybe
Minnesota.
Minnesota, maybe even a team like Pittsburgh at home. So But I think Connor made a good point. If you get to 1-6, things very easily can kind of slip out of control. There's a big difference between being like, going to 2-4 and then maybe 2-5 and then 3-5 and just dropping all the way off to 1-6, because you're really right up against the brink there of a season being completely down the drain in late October, early November. So it's basically like, it feels like a must win for the Jets this Sunday. It's October 1st or the first week of October, but that's really what it feels like. And they're going to also have to try to find a way to beat New England at home if they're not going to go out and get a huge upset over Denver. So they played themselves into this situation by not finding a way to win one of those 3 games or even 2 of those 3 games, and they're going to have to pull off an upset or 2 to dig their way out of it and stay around 500 and stay competitive even in a really bad division. And that's it for the night, guys. Late night, late Tuesday. I got to get home. Everybody, thank you for reading. Thank you for commenting. I appreciate the comment section has not been like crazy personal attacks. We all have differences of opinion, and everyone's frustrated about the team's playing. But it's been good. It's been good stuff in there, and I appreciate that. And thanks for watching and follow us here. Stay with us. We're gonna have some new content coming here once I get working on some stuff here with the whistle. Some hot production content, some more giveaways, courtesy of our friends at NRG. Remember to follow Nimble TV. I'm trying to remember to call out everybody. Dalbin, anybody you want to thank or call out? Anything else to look for from me the rest of the week?
The quarter running back grade sheet will be coming up. Spoiler alert: Chris Ivory has been the best running back we have. And I'll say this now, and I said it before the season: that week 16 matchup against New England, that might be for the division title. So you might want to pay attention to that the rest of the way.
Connor's connection just broke off. I would have gotten a chance to sign off. You made it through the whole show, almost. You're so close. We'll get
very close.
But thanks for watching, guys. Thanks for reading, and we'll talk to you next week. See you.
Have a great one.